I'm Phil Hatch, test-taking expert and creator of TestPerfect.com. In this video, we're going to answer some of the frequently asked questions about the GMAT, things you just need to know in order to start preparing for the test. So the first question is, what is the GMAT? It's the Graduate Management Admission Test. It is the standard test to get into most MBA programs across the United States and even some places around the world. A lot of other programs do use it, things like Masters of Accounting or things like that. Okay? How much does the GMAT cost? It is now $275. That's recently gone up, and so if you have to take it more than once, it can get really expensive. I knew someone once who took it 8 times, which is, by the way, the lifetime maximum. That gets up to a couple $1,000s. The ideal, of course, is to take it once, and you only spend the $275 once. How long is your GMAT score good for? And the answer is 5 years. So even though most business schools require a little work experience, some students find it very effective to take the GMAT either while they're still in school or shortly after school. The thing is, you won't have more time later on. Your life is just going to get more complicated, trust me. And so if you can have a nice light semester sometime, that might be a really good time to study for the GMAT. But if you're already in the workforce and working full-time and probably have a family and all sorts of different things, it's just what it is. You have to build this in and study for the GMAT when you can. So how long is the test? Well, it's technically 3 hours and 7 minutes. That's if you don't take your breaks. And honestly, there's a few little minutes of filling out things at the start. And so it's going to take closer to 3.5 hours to take the whole test. And if you take your breaks, you could even be pushing close to 4 hours that you're there at the testing center. So a good half day. And it's tough. It's a long test. How do I sign up for the GMAT? This is really easy. You just go to mba.com. Now, once you're there, they're going to have you create a free account. So once you've created that account, then you can just register for the test. The registration is incredibly simple. They just have a calendar system. You click on the day you want. It'll show you the times that are available. Click on the time you want, and, well, pay them the $275, and you're registered to take the test. So it's actually really quite easy. Pretty fantastic, actually. And then the next question. What is a good GMAT score? That's actually a really good question. Now, you get a lot of GMAT scores. You get an essay score, an integrated reasoning score, you get a math score, and a verbal score. But in the end, they combine math and verbal into an overall score that goes from 200 to 800. The average score usually goes from around 560 to 580. It fluctuates a little over time. But that's kind of what an average is going to look like. Now, average may not get you into school, especially the top schools. If you're looking for the top schools, the averages at the top schools are around a 740. And so you probably want to be up there or above there. Now, that's their average, and of course they're accepting people who are below the average also. But if you want to feel competitive at the top schools, your score better start with a 7, is kind of what I would say. But that doesn't mean if you get in the 600s, you're not going to be able to go to business school, or even the 500s. There are business schools out there that are really looking for students and will accept you. Now, you still have to, have a great application, resume, and everything, but you're going to be able to get a business degree. Now, if you want to go to the top schools, expect it to be a challenge, of course, all right? So, the next question that we get asked a lot, and that is, what is on the GMAT? And so we'll take a few minutes and talk you through this. There's essentially 3 blocks on test day. There's a math block, a verbal block, and then a block that includes something called integrated reasoning and essay. So let's start with that last block. So it's an hour-long block, and it has 2 things, a half-hour essay and a half-hour section called integrated reasoning. The essay is an analysis of an argument. You're essentially given a paragraph, and your job is to criticize that person in the paragraph, or to criticize their logic, rather. So they're trying to use evidence to support a conclusion or recommendation, and you are pointing out how they failed, because they failed, and they failed spectacularly, by the way. These are poorly reasoned arguments. Always. Never a well-reasoned argument. Now, the great thing is that every essay prompt that can be asked on test day is already published on MBA.com. So you can search that out and find a list of all essay prompts and be prepared as well as possible for the test day experience. But definitely go and practice some essays before test day, because you'll be surprised how fast a half hour goes when you're trying to write a good essay. The next part of that same block is called integrated reasoning. That's a section that first appeared on the test in 2012, and it's a section that incorporates math and verbal and charts and graphs and flow charts and spreadsheets, and it's actually a fantastic new section, and I feel like as time goes on, it's going to have more and more importance. At this stage, a lot of schools are still not using that as part of their admissions decisions, but a lot are. And so you need to find out from the school you're applying to if that affects your admissions decision. Now, it is a separate score, though. The essay and the integrated reasoning are both separate. They don't factor in to your overall 200 to 800 score. So it's an additional score that the schools can choose to look at to determine, your eligibility. Okay, so the next block is the verbal block. So you have the three blocks again: essay, integrated reasoning, verbal, and math. The verbal block is essentially just testing three things. So it's testing reading comprehension. So that is exactly what you think it is. You should expect probably around 4 passages of around 3 or 4 questions each. The passages can be about almost anything. You can probably expect a sciencey passage, history, social science. The funny thing is I actually have a law degree, and one of the times I took the GMAT, I got 2 law passages. Now, for someone who has a law degree, those are not too bad. But for an average student, a law passage is really dense and would be really difficult. Okay? So there's reading comp. There's also what's called critical reasoning. And critical reasoning is in some ways kind of like reading comp junior. Instead of a full passage, you have a single paragraph with just one question after that. Now, the questions are actually much more based in formal logic. So things like, how could you weaken this argument or strengthen it? What's an assumption that was made? What inference could be drawn? What was the role of this statement? What would be useful in order to evaluate the argument? There's various different question types, and you should expect around 8 to 10 of these on your section. The next thing that's included is sentence correction. Now, I'm just going to say that that's essentially grammar, although it's more than just grammar. It's also kind of usage stuff and clarity, concision, but it's really mostly about grammar. So you need to relearn some grammar rules and get a lot of practice in, because as you do a lot of practice, you'll get it dialed in for test day. So the things that you probably will be tested on are things like subject-verb agreement, pronoun usage, misplaced modifiers, parallelism, verb tense, completeness of run-on sentences or sentence fragments. Use of punctuation is actually tested. And then there's things like the meaning of the sentence, the clarity, the concision, and even idiom usage. So it's something that takes a little bit of getting up to speed for most people. So that's kind of what's tested on the verbal section. Let's get into the math section. So the math it's essentially high school math, but asked in kind of tricky ways. So here's kind of the areas of math you're going to be working on. You'll have arithmetic. By the way, you don't get a calculator on the GMAT, so you have to know how to add fractions and keep track of decimal points and do percent changes and all that, ratios and things along those lines. Next is algebra, which, of course, that's on the test. Geometry, which You sometimes have to question why that's on a test for business school, but it's on it. So there's also number properties. Number properties are things like odds and evens, positives and negatives, exponents and square roots, and prime numbers and factors, that sort of thing. There's also statistics. Now this is not like a college stats class, it's more like averages and medians and ranges and standard deviations. They do get into permutations, combinations, and probabilities, which are hard for me, but those are tested on the GMAT. And then there's various kinds of word problems. The word problems are going to be things like, two trains coming together, rate, time, distance, rate, time, work with machines working on a production order. They could have a question about profit. So on the GMAT, the formula is sales minus cost equals profit. Things like that are tested on the GMAT. And then I'm considering adding another category because as time goes by, they keep adding a few more questions that are based on charts and graphs. Now, the charts and graphs questions are also going to ask you to do some of this math, but you'll have to read a chart to get the information that you need. But you will very likely have to read a chart or a graph. But that's pretty standard stuff. A bar graph, a pie chart. It's not overly complicated. Okay, so that's basically what's on the GMAT. Now, here's the next question. How can you take a practice test? So this is back to MBA.com. Once you've created your account, you go to the store at the MBA.com, and they have 6 practice tests there. 2 of them are free, completely free. And then there's 4 more that you can purchase for a total of $90. So nobody should ever take the GMAT without having taken at least those 2 free ones. And if you possibly can afford it, spend that extra $90 and get the 4 additional practice tests. Practice testing is one of the best things you can do to get ready for the test. And these practice tests are designed just like the real thing. They're going to be on the computer and just very much similar to the real thing. So, all right, last question. How should you study for the test? Well, turns out we're a test prep company, and so can I suggest testperfect.com? So I'm the teacher for testperfect.com. I've been doing this for close to 20 years, teaching the GMAT, and even before that I was teaching the LSAT. So I've got a lot of experience and really enjoy this. I know that's weird, but it's fun. Then you'll have 8 weeks of lecture, homework, drills, quizzes. So it's designed around an 8-week structure, although it is on demand, and so you can accelerate that if you need to or choose to. There are hundreds of practice questions, and in fact, I've gone through the official guide and done a video of me solving every single one of those math questions. And so if math is something you struggle with, you'll get a lot of personal explanation on how to do those math questions. You also can repeat our course as often as you want. We don't kick you out. We don't expect you to go through in 8 weeks and then you know everything. Some people do, but other people need to be able to go through that again and again, and you'll have it as long as you need it. All the books and materials are included, so you'll get the official guide, a couple of supplements to the official guide, our class notes, and everything. So we're trying to have a one-shop or a one-package deal that you get everything you need to study for the GMAT. So the online course is on demand. You can do it at your own pace. So I hope this has been helpful. If it has, be sure to check out some of our other videos. They should be off here to my side. And feel free to check out our course, and hopefully it's something that'll help you study for the GMAT.